And we are back with this February 14th, Valentine's Day episode of InfoWars Nightly News with award-winning documentary filmmaker, best-selling author, BBC News investigative reporter, ABC News investigative reporter Greg Palast. And I got to tell you, I read his book recently. I got it a few months ago, didn't have time to read it. It is, I think, his best. It's Vultures Picnic in Pursuit of Petroleum, Pigs, Power, Pirates, and High Finance Carnivores. And I wanted to get him on to get the inside scoop on Mitt Romney, who's really behind him. Also, what's happening in Greece being gobbled up. They're now announcing world government by the private banks. So the Ponzi scheme operators don't go to jail, unless they're Bernie Madoff, I guess, or Ken Lay. They actually take the planet over. And I want to ask him about some of these headlines. Israel working with terror group in Iran. U.S. working with Al-Qaeda in Libya. Just amazing to see the dreaded enemy, Al-Qaeda, working so closely with our loving governments like Israel, NATO, and the United States. But without further ado, joining us via video connection Skype is Greg Palast. Greg, great to have you here with us.
Happy Valentine's Day, Guy.
Now, I know you're always ferreting deeply into what's really behind things. You exposed Bush, you exposed Obama. What's going on with the golden boy of the neocons, Mr. Mitt Romney?
Mr. Mitt Romney, if you remember, he was the principal of Bain Capital, and everyone's just saying, oh, Bain Capital, they're vulture capitalists. Well, but it's Bain Capital money, it's not his money that's in this race. Romney has an avalanche of money compared to the others, and no one seems to be asking, where did he get it? BBC television asked me to get in and investigate and find out where his money's coming from. Under the guise of an Operation Super PAC called Restore Our Future, the #1 donor for the Romney campaign, the guy who seems to be at the center of the whole thing, is a guy named Paul the Vulture Singer. Now, I didn't name him the Vulture. He happens to be one of the guys I'm targeting in my book, Vultures Picnic. How did he get the name Vulture? His bankers gave him the name, and he loved it, though now I think he's trying to rebrand himself. You have to understand, he is a billionaire worth about $4 billion. He's teamed up with the Koch brothers, David and Charles. Singer put in $1 million check into Restore Our Future, and he's given all kinds of other money. By the way, they don't even like Mitt Romney. Their first choice is Chris Christie, and by the way, they're maneuvering Romney into a loss. They're his supposed PAC, but they're maneuvering him into a brokered convention where the billionaires can be brokers. Now, who is Singer, and why does he want a president? He doesn't care about Romney's politics. He couldn't give a damn. He is investing. He's investing in real estate, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Paul the Vulture Singer made his first killing, as all vultures do. They wait for corporations to die, countries to die, people to die. And his first billion was made when he bought a company called Owens Corning. It made asbestos. These were basically death factories where their workers' lungs were being turned to mush because they're filling with asbestos. They got asbestosis, and then you die a horrible, slow, suffocating death. When it was discovered that the company had been doing this and knew about it, they went into bankruptcy, and their executives agreed to give all their future profits to their workers who were dying. Paul Singer swooped in, the Vulture. Singer the Vulture swooped in, bought the company out of bankruptcy for peanuts, and I don't even think he included the shells. He bought Owens Corning for peanuts, and then he used his political influence with a guy named George W. Bush and others to change the rules so he wouldn't have to pay the asbestos workers. They had to take about 20 cents on the dollar. They lost about 80 cents. What happened to the 80 cents? It basically went into Singer's pocket because the company didn't have to pay their dying workers anymore. And the dying workers accepted whatever they could take. They were dying. They just took it. And he kept that 80 cents, which added up to over $1 billion profit. So with an investment of next to nothing, using political influence, not smart investing, political influence, he made $1 billion, this guy. Then he went after the Peru. He went after the Congo. I just came back from the Congo following this guy's money down up the Congo River. That's where Mitt Romney's getting his money. The characters behind him are not investors. They're not wealth creators. They're vultures. And they make, when they talk about Bain Capital being a vulture company, they're Girl Scouts compared to the guys who are actually behind Romney.
Well, when you see the entire establishment media, left and right, giving the guy a pass, when you see the big neocon talk show hosts pretty much endorsing him, when you see all of this, it becomes clear he's who they want. And then you have the last head of Bain Capital, and of course, Romney's still highly invested in it with that so-called trust. Now you have the last head of Bain Capital going to work for Obama to replace Daley. So it shows that the people behind Romney are also those, to a certain extent, behind Obama, and many of the policies that they both support are the same. So this shows that the establishment basically wants to keep things going in the same direction. And if you look at how Bain and others go in and buy up profitable companies, chop them all off, he calls that wealth production. What do you see? What are the goals of the people that control Mitt Romney? I mean, who are some of these individuals? And when you say Bain is nothing compared to them, what type of folks are we talking about, and why do they like Mitt?
Okay, well, actually, the Deputy Secretary of the UN, you may not be crazy about the UN, but he's certainly a guy who's worried about people in Africa. He said that people like Paul the Vulture Singer, that they are causing babies to die. I was just in the Congo where Singer and his buddies took the money that the United States had set aside to help the Congo stop a cholera epidemic, to clean up their water supplies. They claimed that some vultures claimed that the Congo owed them money. I traced this so-called debt back to Bosnia, and a $3 million illegal payment to the ex-prime minister of Bosnia, another country we pulled out with NATO bombers, remember. And as what happened was that we installed a prime minister who then took $3 million from one of these vultures and gave him the right to collect money from the Congo. It was all done illegally. The police in Bosnia have now said that that was an illegal transaction, trying to put their ex-prime minister in prison. This is the type of money that is backing the Romney campaign. Now, you have to wonder why. The answer is really simple. The European community, England, others are pressuring the U.S. government to make Paul Singer's activity illegal. It's illegal in a lot of the world. You know, this guy's made billions through these really questionable methods, going after the asbestos workers, going after poor Congolese. He helped the president of Peru, a guy named Fujimori, escape the country ahead of murder charges, and that helped him put $58 million of Peruvian Treasury money in his pocket. I've been following this guy around the world. Quite creepy. He needs a president in office who will protect him, because the other nations are asking the U.S. to shut down his operations. This is not investing. And I got to tell you that Paul the Vulture Singer, when I ran these reports, and don't forget, these reports are run at the top of the nightly news worldwide, except in the United States. You're the exception, Alex, allowing me to report on Romney's billionaires. And by the way, Obama's billionaires is too, let's not forget. Well, let's leave some time for those guys too. But Romney's billionaire, he had his goons call up my producers in London at BBC and say, we've got a file on Greg Palast. Now, in the U.S., that would be the end of my career. But BBC said, well, Greg Palast has a file on you. And that's, my book, Vultures Picnic. I've been following these guys a long time. But you have to understand who these guys are behind Romney. And like I say, it's not so much that they're behind Romney. Their super PAC called Restore Our Future isn't about restoring your future, Alex, or mine, or Romney's. It's their future. In fact, what they're really hoping to do, don't forget, Paul the Vulture Singer, the Kochs, and his friends, Paulson, a multi-billionaire guy, made $4 billion in 1 year, helping crash the U.S. housing market. That's another guy behind Romney, wrote a check for $1 million cash Singer wrote a check for $1 million cash. Koch, $500,000 cash. Then they pulled out their cash just before the Colorado, Missouri, and Minnesota caucuses, allowing Romney to lose. Let's not forget, he was allowed to lose by his super PAC. They didn't put in a dime. Why? They're not sure that they really want Romney. He's their second best choice. They want to control the Republican convention and name the guy that they want. And I don't think it's Romney. He's their second choice.
Well, I was about to bring that up. They've got even top Republican strategists out there running around now saying they could do a brokered convention. As you know, they changed the rules 2 years ago in 2010 to be able to do that. And they're now floating as the knight in shining armor, at least as VP, Jeb Bush. And I got to say it, I cannot stand Obama. He's run by some of the very same crew, but another Bush, I mean, this is becoming a hereditary dictatorship, especially if they get a Bush in through a brokered convention and not even running in a general primary.
Well, I think they feel comfortable with Jeb Bush. I think they feel comfortable with Chris Christie. And what they're mainly worried about is not even who these guys are. They're worried that Romney, Santorum, and Gingrich simply can't win. They need someone to scare Obama. By the way, they don't necessarily need to replace Obama, just scare him away from anything that might threaten them.
Well, that's another question I want to raise right here. I have no doubt that News Corps is involved in spying and corruption and tapping of phones, and all of that has, come out, and people have been admitting to it, and one guy, the main witness, mysteriously dies. I mean, all of this is going on. Now they're talking about investigations here, indictments here. But the Justice Department's got Fast and Furious going on. They've got their own energy, company scams going on, paying off donors. And so it looks like the two sides are jockeying to basically blackmail each other. And I do see News Corps softening on Obama with, some hosts saying Obama's a great guy now. But since you're over in England and in New York, kind of a guy in between, tell us what the inside scoop is on what's going on with the whole News Corps situation. I mean, how much fire is where that smoke's coming from, and how does it tie into Obama?
Ties in plenty, because I did an undercover investigation of one of News Corps' lobbyists. I wore a hidden wire and pretended that I was a lobbyist for Enron. And so I was hooking up with News Corps' lobbyists to hire them in. So I did that for the Observer newspaper of Britain. So I went inside. I spoke with Murdoch's lobbyists working, and they're working both at that time. They're working, by the way, with the Clintons. They're working, and they're working with Tony Blair. What they said is, look, as long as these governments can lock up with media, that they are safe. That's the game. So their lobbyists basically offer a protection racket. And they even gave me very, very specific examples of stories that were placed to protect these people. Like I say, I have these lobbyists on tape. These tapes were, by the way, broadcast on the BBC Nightly News. So I went inside. If you ever meet these guys and go inside, you'd be stunned at what they say about how they operate. I mean, it was just absolutely unbelievable, saying, that they basically run stories past 10 Downing Street. They had direct contact with the White House. What do these guys want? So when they feel like it, they shoot some bullets at the White House or 10 Downing, and then just to scare everyone, and then the tune is named. There's all kinds of back and forth politics here, where someone's going to have to walk the plank. Maybe someone's trying to stab James Murdoch in the back from inside the organization, maybe even within the family. But, there are wider issues here. I got to tell you that, Piers Morgan is deeply involved in this stuff, and that drags in CNN.
Well, let me stop you right there.
He skipped the bullet. Yeah.
Greg, I want you to expand on that, because I don't really ever toot my own horn here, because I'm always busy. I'm obsessed with the story. I'm obsessed with the interesting guest. I'm obsessed with reality and really trying to learn reality for myself. I mean, this is an obsession, a passion, an addiction. And I know for you it's the same, because I've read your books, followed your work for more than a decade. I think that we forget how effective we've been, yourself particularly. I mean, I forget all the time I think back to all the things I've done, the stories I've broken. And then I was just thinking while you were talking about books she wrote 6, 7 years ago saying News Corps was spying and wielding authority. And I was just thinking, wait a minute, right. I haven't heard hardly anybody, well, I did see a few articles, giving you credit for being right about all this. And I've been right about so many things. I just think it's important we point out that you in 2002 got the IMF World Bank documents and said how they've imploded Argentina and third world countries. They're going to do that in Europe and the U.S. They're going to use derivatives. They're going to take over. They're going to occupy the countries. Boom, it's all happened. I mean, I'm just sitting here not in some mutual admiration society. It's kind of freaking me out because I don't have that high a view of myself. You know, I'm just a regular guy just trying to find out what's happening. You're an investigative reporter. I have high views of you. I mean, my point is, it is creepy to know there's not many of us that actually know what's going on or that have any type of venue, and I'm getting threats. I'm on the enemy's list. They're calling you up saying, we got files on you. It's creepy. And I've digressed off here, but I think it's newsworthy that we always are just moving forward, never pointing out where we were right in the past. So spend a few minutes and then get back into CNN, because I remember having you on, you having the documents, you talking about News Corps, a mafia, and I remember going, well, I believe Greg, and yeah, he's got some proof, but and then their outlets demonizing you and calling you a liar, and cover stories. I mean, that's all actually in Vultures Picnic that came out even before this scandal broke. So yeah, I mean, I think you better get some good life insurance. I know I have, and none of us are ever going to commit suicide, right, Greg?
Never. If I'm floating face down the swimming pool, please don't believe any note that says I felt terrible and had to go. Don't buy it, please. Okay, I'm putting that down on the record right now.
Me too.
I've never held a knife to my own throat ever. So so please, I want to put that right on the record. I'm glad we got a moment to do that. As in terms of saying, yeah, I told you so, I think it is worthwhile because it gives credibility to the material that we did put on before. I should note that I'm a lucky guy in one way. You might not see me on US TV except bless you, Alex, especially on Valentine's Day, then kiss you. But I do have the world's largest news network behind me, putting me on a prime time BBC television. Now, do understand that BBC, when I got the documents from inside the IMF, and now we do see Greece on fire. There's a chapter in Vultures Picnic called The Generalissimo of Globalization, where I actually have these documents from inside the IMF, World Bank. And because of my position in journalism in Europe, I was actually able to confront personally the Director General of the World Trade Organization and put these inside confidential documents and cables in front of him. That was his opportunity to say, oh, it's all made up, it's a bunch of conspiracy junk. He verified everything. He tried to talk away their meaning, but he verified everything, that I had all the documents I had. When you see Greece on fire, I saw those documents. I also spoke to the inventor of the euro, Bob Mundell, and who said, basically is saying this was in the plan. The idea was he wanted to make sure that there was a sell-off of all the government properties in Greece, et cetera. You have to set a fire if you're going to have a fire sale. He thought that this is the best thing that's ever happened. These guys, this was the purpose of the euro. He said he was very upset, he told me, that democracies get to kind of vote on their fiscal and monetary control. He wanted to create a mechanism, the euro, which would make elected parliaments and congresses and presidents subservient to an economic formula. And the economic formula is called the 3% rule there. There's a German word which I can't pronounce that they use. But that was the purpose, was to basically create something that would replace democracy. In fact, by the way, I spoke with, because of my position, I get to meet all these heads of state, et cetera. And I've met with Carlo Monti, the new prime minister of Italy, the new chief of Italy. And Monti, has not been elected. He's just a banker. That's, you don't get to choose anymore.
They call him a technocrat. I mean, even The Economist says it's good to not have countries run themselves. We, the technocrats, will run it now. And as you said years ago when you got to meet, with the head of the organization, the World Trade Organization, they admitted this is how we were going to take over. but then they're the ones that sold the fraudulent debt and got the governments to sign on. They're the ones that actually have most of the debt. And so they do this Svengali judo move where they're set up as our bosses, even though they're the progenitors of it. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, in fact, in the case of like Greece, I call it a crime scene. In particular, the Greek government, to stay within the euro, both the so-called socialists and the so-called conservatives there had cut a private deal with Goldman Sachs to hide their true deficits. And this was true of most of the countries, but this was particularly done with Goldman Sachs and had to do with trading euros into yen and dollars and back. Technically, on paper, it looked like Goldman Sachs took a multi-billion-dollar loss. Well, Goldman Sachs never takes a deliberate multi-billion-dollar loss. That's nonsense. In fact, it was covered up by a secret agreement to pay them back at massive charges, with massive usurious charges. I mean, you couldn't call it anything else, plus a $500 million fee on top of the massive interest rates that they were collecting, all done in secret. When this came out, of course, then the Greek bond market, the market for Greek bonds, completely collapsed, and people rightly, in a way, asked for massively high interest because, they say we're victims of a fraud. Now, why? Someone asked me, actually one of the band members from, if you remember, Dire Straits, asked me, well, how come they weren't arrested? Well, the United States, the Securities Exchange Commission is supposed to arrest the government of Greece, because after all, it was a conspiracy between two governments and Goldman Sachs. And here's the deal: instead of Goldman being busted, they get money from the European Central Bank. They get totally bailed out. They get fees for handling the bailout, and then their guys take over the country and they buy up the assets of the country, the shipping, the beaches, the
islands. I've seen cases in the news where they owe a brokerage firm that sold them crap $3 billion. So the head of the company goes, I'll take an island personally for $3 billion. I mean, and it's all through fraud. So I guess Madoff's problem and Ken Lay's problem was the frauds weren't big enough and weren't so giant that it'd bring down the whole system. Here's my question for you, and then I want to go back to the news court thing, because people say, hey, you cut him off when you got to the part about CNN. Where is it all headed now with MF Global, where, as you know, the head of the commodities board was the former minion of Corzine. Corzine gets caught in Congress lying. Of course, he ordered the now $1.6 billion transferred to London, and then he doesn't get in trouble. And I was talking to Max Kaiser today. He said, look, this is just going to signal a new level of stealing going after segregated accounts. So, A, where is it all headed? And then, B, going back, what is News Corp from your deep research and understanding? What is it? More of a mafia organization? And then tie it in to the host that took over Larry King's slot that you were trying to get to when I interrupted.
Okay, that's quite a tall order. First, Corzine, who was governor of New Jersey, but he was also, you have to understand, he was the CEO of Goldman Sachs before he became governor of New Jersey. Now, why don't they go after Corzine? Why isn't he read his rights? I mean, if you shoplift, a screwdriver from a hardware store, they're gonna read you your rights. You shoplift $1.6 billion, and they invite you to Congress to just give a chat. Why? The answer is what he has on these guys and who else is in on this stuff. Now, I got a glimpse of it. I can't get it all, because I just don't have all of the roots in, but I did have a document marked confidential from Tim Geithner, who is our Secretary of Treasury, to Larry Summers. It's in the book Vultures Picnic. In fact, you can see it at my site, vulturespicnic.org. It was a cable written by Geithner to Summers talking about how they were going to use the World Trade Organization to squeeze any nation that got in the way of our banks and didn't join in the deregulation fest that was going on. So how they're going to punish nations, in particular Brazil. Now, why is that important, this discussion? The answer is that Geithner told Summers, who was at that time Secretary of Treasury, now until recently was Obama's economic czar. Why did Geithner, our now Secretary of Treasury, write to Summers? He was telling him to call the top 5 bankers in America before they pulled the trigger at the World Trade Organization, because it could bring down, and did bring down, the world financial order. But he didn't want to do that unless he said, call these guys. John Corzine was one of the 5 guys to call. And by the way, the memo I have and print in the book are their private and personal numbers. And one of the first reviewers of the book before it was published decided, oh, what the heck, I'll call the numbers and see. And he got he got right through personally to the CEO of Citibank, right into his office. Obviously, those numbers have changed. But the important thing is these guys, our leaders, Secretary of Treasury, do not pee unless they contact Goldman. It was Bank of America, Citibank, Morgan. Those are the guys running the show. And if they were to ever try to nail Corzine, Madoff is just a sideshow. But if they're ever to try to nail Corzine, he could pull out his files and say, well, let's talk about some of the meetings we had.
So here's my question.
Right.
What do you do when there's 5 or 6 mega bank dons who've gotten so untouchable because they know where all the bodies are buried that they start publicly just stealing cash straight out of people's accounts? I mean, that's corruption getting to that terminal model where, you know, that historians talk about, where nobody can blow the whistle on anybody else, and so things just rapidly disintegrate. Are we starting to reach the disintegration point, or does it have a decade more of just deepening Caligula-type mania?
Well, the good thing is that America is at its core a very rich nation. And there's rich pickings. As I said, one of their big targets was Brazil, which is fabulously rich. Another target of Paul the Vulture Singer is the Congo. He's been seizing money for shipments of cobalt and oil. So there's a lot of resource out there in this planet. And there's an unending appetite of the Chinese to take it. So if they can get their hands on our resources by owning all our debt and controlling it, manipulating it, you know, it's amazing how much Americans will accept paying. 2 million foreclosures a year, massive stealing by Corzine, by Goldman. You saw the fraud in Greece. People in Greece are burning down buildings, but, you know, Americans are shrugging their shoulders. You know, it's amazing the amount of punishment the American people will take. So I think that there's quite a while yet before, because there's a lot of money still to steal out of the, you know, a lot of gold to
sure, there is. But I mean, Greg, you live here, I live here, but you go all over the world more than probably anybody I know. I'm seeing the oxygen leave the room. I mean, I'm seeing family, everybody I know, even people that have been upper middle class, well-to-do. I mean, there's money problems. Stuff costs a lot more, and we've been somewhat isolated from the rest of the world, but it's going to accelerate. Even Forbes is saying we're probably going to see 30+% inflation in just the next year. And I think it's the old story of the sleeping giant. But that's even scarier, because it's going to get so much worse before they finally wake up. And then you've got Obama signing the NDAA, the Republicans supporting it. They're admittedly training the military for urban warfare and domestic unrest. I mean, it's pretty scary.
Well, you know, let's face it. When you and I talked back in 2002, 9 years ago, when I first got my hands on the IMF and World Bank documents, they'd gone after they'd burnt Argentina to the ground. You had professors hunting through garbage cans looking for food. Brazil had basically become a financial colony, and they were squeezing it dry. Ecuador had lost all its oil and was basically, you know, a duchy of Chevron. So what's happened? But then those nations came back. People went into the streets in those nations. They said that, you know, Occidental Petroleum, Al Gore's little operation, got tossed out of Ecuador. Brazil told the IMF to go to hell. The only nation in the entire planet which has refused to sign the financial services agreement, opening up their banking sector to the derivatives toxic salesmen. Argentina told these characters to go fly. Those economies are now just really zooming. So people do react. However, we did say this is going to cross over to Europe. Europe is gloating that they've been able to pick up resources out of Latin America for nothing.
No, you said that in 2002 on my show. The transcript of it is a chapter in my book that's out of print, Sent to Tyranny, but it's posted here at prisonplanet.tv. We only got about 10 minutes left with you. You've been very gracious joining us here this evening, Greg. I'll get you back on the radio soon. And it's all in Vultures Picnic, available at Amazon, bookstores everywhere. In fact, I was just at Barnes & Noble last week and picked up another copy for family. They had a big end cap of them there, so that must be selling quite well if it's at the end cap at Barnes & Noble. So people are hungry for the truth. But I want to go back, because I interrupted running off into a side issue. Let's go back to News Corps. What is News Corps at its heart? Because you were the first I've ever seen saying all this. I'm like, really, Greg? It's kind of a creepy group, influence peddling, spying on people, telling Downing Street what to do. Now it's all come out, hiring police, spying on people, everything you said. And it's actually in your book. Funny, it came out or was being written right as this broke, you know, how they were saying you were full of it earlier. But now it's come out. I mean, who are they really? And then you were getting off into CNN. The fact that this isn't just, News Corps now.
You bet. It's the whole crew. But like I say, I went in wearing a wire, using a false front operation for the Observer, and then later BBC joined in, where we did secret recording of Murdoch's lobbyists. And they laid the whole thing out. They don't see themselves as a media company. They see themselves as a political information organization. In other words, to make their money. Media, like, you can't just make money by opening a radio or TV station or a web outlet. You know how difficult that is if you really have to compete on the merits. This is all about buying and selling spectrum, buying and selling control of airwaves. And so for Murdoch, for News Corps, everything is about their political connection, their ability to lock things up and lock others out. And so the lobbyists were explaining that basically they are the conduit for a business elite, and secondarily the political elite, so that they're not so much for or against a particular candidate. And you notice that Murdoch will switch back and forth on who he backs.
Sure, he's influence peddling.
So, it's basically up for the highest bidder. What does he want? Very concerned about getting the China and Southeast Asia market right now. And they need the political help of the European governments and the U.S. government. So that's Murdoch and News Corps. Then you have, at the same time, you have Time Warner, CNN. And what Piers Morgan was one of the people. When I went undercover, the first thing that they had to do was discredit me. So Piers Morgan, who was in this operation, he was editor of the Daily Mail, one of the tabloid papers there, and Morgan basically set up a deal where well, to put it this way, I was trying to get more information going undercover. I was wearing a wire, and I thought, well, one way to get some information is there was a very fairly good-looking woman, quite good-looking woman, who was very close to Tony Blair, a rising young political star, and I thought that I could get some information from her probably easier if we had less clothes on. That wouldn't have been so bad, except that her husband walked in, and I could have dealt with that. But the main thing was that Piers Morgan had set this up so that his photographers came in, and they used that to try to discredit me by, so I was all over the front page.
And again, you're working hard for the story. I mean,
yeah. So, okay. But by the way, I got the story. And that's what they didn't like. And the story, by the way, involved Enron. It involved the big power company, Southern Company of the U.S. It involved these huge power companies that were basically buying up influence. And News Corps. In News Corps, Entergy, which is very, very close to the Clintons. Okay, so there's Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Entergy Corporation. There was Enron, which is the Bushes. There was News Corps. I was getting this information and how Tony Blair was selling out his government. And of course, I'm getting the information about the U.S. government because it involves the Clintons and Entergy. This Little Rock company, by the way, a tiny company from Little Rock, was given ownership of London Electricity, if you can imagine this gigantic operation. Then they flip it to the French, to Électricité de France, after holding it a couple months and make $2 billion, right? So $2 billion is made out of thin air, really close friends of the Clintons, right? This is how it all works. So I'm getting this information, and yeah, okay, so my zipper was down, so they caught me with my pants off. Yeah, okay. But you know what? They can discredit me, but they couldn't discredit the evidence. And it is to the great, great thanks to The Guardian and BBC that they didn't care, that they didn't care whether my pants are up or down. The important thing is that the information I had was rock solid.
Yeah, what matters is that
was a story.
What matters is that it was true what you were saying, and it's certainly all been borne out. Now, I tell you, this is incredible information, Greg. I'm going to air part of this on the radio tomorrow. In fact, the last 15 minutes has, I think, been some of the best TV/radio we've ever done. Just amazing information. That's the kind of stuff that people will find in this book, Vultures Picnic, and they certainly are vultures. Shifting gears now to the last question. We see Hillary saying it's a new peace war. We need to invade Syria with peacekeepers, peace bombs for Libya. I'm no fan of Gaddafi. I'm no fan of Assad. I'm no fan of Mubarak. But they're replacing them with Muslim Brotherhood. They're torturing the ambassador to France. They're killing thousands of black people. They're lining folks up and shooting them. The real humanitarian disaster has now happened. AFRICON is admitting they're invading Africa through there. I want to get your perspective, but this is what I've seen. And now we're being lectured, and I'm seeing the CIA operative, Anderson Cooper, with this young guy up there one night going, they are killing us 40,000 today. Next day, he's got a perfect English accent. Their actor is so bad, you know, on these shows, he can't even get that straight. So the whole thing is obviously a baby thrown out of the incubator story. And again, not a fan of Assad, but they admit Al-Qaeda is the main group in Libya. They're shipping Al-Qaeda into Syria. I thought I had to let the TSA stick their hands down my pants and my wife's pants because Al-Qaeda was going to get me and was hiding under every table. But now Al-Qaeda, I'm being told, are some good people. So I'm confused. What's going on here?
Would you believe it? It's about the oil. And what's happening, Syria doesn't have oil per se, but this is about control by Saudi Arabia over a Shia land. The Syria and Assad is an Alawite, which is a sect which is split off from the Shia, which are absolutely hated and despised by the Saudis.
So he's a minority of the most hated group by the Wahhabists.
Right. And so what they want to do, they see an opportunity. Now, of course, well, I agree with you. Assad is an absolute fanatic murderer. But you notice that when he killed 10,000 of his own people in the city of Hama, we just, whistled. We didn't care about that. It's just that now the Saudis have said, now that the Saudis are out to get him, suddenly we're concerned. And that disturbs me. Again, Assad is a murderer. When his dad killed those 10,000 innocent people and we said nothing, it made me sick. And to see the son now repeat the same trick, it also makes me sick. But then what makes me sicker in some way is to say, well, we're finally going to say something about it, maybe do something about it, because the Saudis don't want him there. And part of it is religious, but also part of it is a showdown with Iran over control of OPEC. And the control of the Shia Crescent. Remember that Saudi Arabia moved into Bahrain. I realize it's a little complex, but Bahrain was facing an uprising by a Shia majority against a Sunni monarchy backed by the Saudis. The Saudis cannot afford to have Shia-controlled nations or they're going to lose control of the oil routes.
Exactly. Our media acts like all the Arabs want to kill Christians and Jews when it's an incredibly diverse group and they're busy with their own empires, hating and killing each other much more than they supposedly hate the West. From my meager research, you've done more and been over there a lot more. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, their battles are internal within the Islamic religion. Huge internal battles, which also obviously go to resources. And you see this split in places that you haven't heard of, but wait till the 101st Airborne gets there. I was just in Vultures Picnic. I was in Baku, Azerbaijan, which is one of those new Islamic republics. I call it the Islamic Republic of BP. We're going to end up there. Once again, you've got the problem where you have a Sunni dictator who was the old KGB chief, right? He went from being a good communist to being a good Muslim, right? And the reason he's a good Muslim in our view, and now he's our great ally, is that he's given a contract to BP Amoco, which is now one company, by the way.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then in closing. Where is it all going? Should we just step back and let them all kill each other? What would then happen in the West? Obviously, we pay for the empire, really don't get many of the goods, just being honest about it. And how does somebody like Ron Paul, in your view, tie in with the demonization, the clear election fraud, the system coming after him? I haven't asked Greg Palast his view on Ron Paul.
Well, the main thing is what's going to happen now in these Islamic republics. In the case of Assad, it's horrible to have him stay there and murder his people. What I do worry about is bringing in the dark night of Wahhabism as the alternative. I just spoke to one of my, a friend of mine who is an Arabic speaker. He's Arabic. And he earned his PhD on the Muslim Brotherhood. And he said Egypt is going to devolve into another kind of Iran light. Yes, we do have problems. We were paying, as you said, with Al-Qaeda, we were paying the Taliban to allow shipments across Afghanistan. The realpolitik of the Mideast is getting more and more complex, slick with oil, and now we're adding, by the way, uranium in Islamic nations like Niger. So it's a multi-level chessboard. Now, I can't say I understand all the pieces. Obviously, as an investigative reporter, I've been going to these places and getting inside as much as I can to try to understand it. But obviously, it's not as simple as Assad, the bad guy, who was a good guy last week. Look, we went through this. Saddam was our ally when he was murdering people left and right.
Well, here's what I'm saying. Obviously, the West isn't going in there to put a democracy in, and obviously you're going to end up having the Wahhabists in a big war with the Shiites now in Syria, and it'll be 10 times the deaths. I mean, look what Libya's turned into.
I'm very concerned that what we are doing is igniting, for the purposes of Saudi control of the area, that we're igniting an intra-Islamic war. And maybe some people think that's good. Go let them kill each other. You know what? That ain't going to be good for us. That's not going to be good for this planet. If there is a continuing massive war that's within Islam, fomented by war over oil and uranium and now rare earths like cobalt and other rare earth minerals, which are now becoming another major source of contention in places like Afghanistan. Very, very concerned about this. All
right. Well, incredible interview. Greg Palast, thank you so much for the time. GregPalast.com, the book Vultures Picnic. And I know we were late getting you on, so I'm going to sign off with you now. Thank you so much for the time, Greg.
You're the best, Alex. Really. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. All right. Amazing, in-depth, candid, teleprompter-free, no script, real information. That's Greg Palast. Please thank him for joining us. Okay. In closing, folks, this is real TV. This is real radio when I rebroadcast this tomorrow on the radio. This is what it's all about. And it is imperative that all of you out there continue to spread the word about this broadcast. We are seeing massive censorship increasing everywhere. The governments everywhere are saying they're going to start censoring alternative media because we're becoming the media. We're displacing the traitor media. It's happening. That they're going to use all sorts of tricks. I'm telling you, the attack is now on. It's going to intensify. The wars are starting. The conflicts are accelerating. The covert war in Iran is in full swing. The proxy war against Syria is in full swing. We're going to pay for it, which would be bad enough if our government was just an empire but gave us some of the spoils. We pay for this, and we get the bad name, we get the hatred of the world, and the globalists are setting up police states here domestically, attacking our families, destroying our local control. This new world order is bad for everybody. I talk to so many good old boys, people that are well-to-do, business and things, and they go, Alex, maybe it was an inside job. You got to do tough stuff to keep America strong, fighting the Muslims. Or, Alex, you know, we've got to be involved in all this corruption. That's just how the world works. We're not involved unless we acquiesce to it. But you guys that think this corruption is getting us somewhere, it's not. We're paying for it and getting all the blame. And now the whole Constitution's being shredded. For heaven's sakes, the globalists hate us more than they hate the Muslims. They hate the Muslims because they're free and wild and not under globalist complete control. Saudi Arabia is hooked up with British intel, so it's a little precious. So they've got to be brought under heel. They got to be vaccinated. They got to have MTV pumped in to screw up their families. They've got to be social engineered. And the American people, we're even more hated. If you think the New World Order technocrats, the Rothschilds and people and Rockefellers, if you think they hate the Muslims and people like the Shiites, if you think they hate them and want to see Muslims kill each other, folks, they really hate us, okay? And I'm talking to, Anglo-Saxon, white Protestant males, black people, Hispanic, Asian. You're an American. You live here. You've got this birthright of more freedom than other countries. Our corporate whore media spends all day saying how America isn't perfect and digging up all the bad things in our past. Compare it to other countries. I have. It's good compared to other ones. There's a reason they attack the Bill of Rights and Constitution everywhere and want to get rid of it, because it's a good Constitution. Compared to everything else out there, it's well thought out. It doesn't mean it's ever been fully implemented. But the globalists are scared of it, saying, why don't you just get rid of that? We'll give you something new, because they want to get rid of it. I'm ranting here. It's just, this is a big deal. And when you do support us, more than just having a PrisonPlanet.tv membership, we got 15-day free trial running right now, or getting 40-something% off when you purchase a year membership. Yeah, that funds keeping the lights on, the crew, the material. But more important than just that, when you're watching this free, after members have paid for it, which is part of our plan, millions of people a week online, on all the different video systems, millions a week just on YouTube, please pay it forward. Email it to your email list, your Facebook, your Twitter, if you still got MySpace. Tell folks at work about it. That's how Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com are growing exponentially in the face of censorship and all other sorts of garbage that's going on. Because here's my only big fear, okay? Every day I kick myself when I get off air that I haven't done a good enough job, that I have this incredible platform and responsibility, and I've not really articulated what I understand mentally, intellectually, historically, to a proper level, that if I could just show you what I've researched, which we do here in part, that you would understand. I know most of you are hardcore viewers, do understand, but we've got to make other people understand. We're not telling them what to think. We're just showing them what's going on. We're just getting them to take the blinders off. Like a horse with blinders, take the blinders off. Get outside the box. Stop looking down here. Let me have a document cam shot, please. Stop looking down here like this little box is the entire world. And this is what New World Order television is telling you to watch. This is not the whole world. This is not the whole universe. The magic of creativity and discovery, the wonderment, that is the universe. That is what being alive is. That is the great journey of discovery. The fascination. That's what it is to truly be illuminated. And people are like, whoa, he just said illuminated. That's Illuminati. The Illuminati have counterfeits of everything real. Light in the darkness. The Bible's all about Christ bringing light. Oh, that's Illuminati. No, it's not. The Illuminati claims they're bringing light, but they're bringing a twisted, dark, black sunshine that is not the real light. And look, some people say, oh, I don't want to hear your religious stuff. Whatever. The globalists are religious. They believe in Lucifer. I've studied what they really believe. They know there's a spiritual realm. They know what we see and sense is a tiny band of the overall wavelength. Even the light we see is a tiny piece of the band. Do you understand that? A tiny piece of the band. There's so much more. The band isn't just like this. The band isn't just like this. And it's in all directions. You understand? It's interdimensional. I mean, we are only a tiny expression of something larger, and you can feel it. You know it's there. Put whatever definition you want on it. These people don't want you to have that. I want you to have consciousness. I know you have consciousness. I want to see like a seed grow. I want to grow and awaken and learn and be a good person. And being a good person means I want to be aggressive and strong and stomp evil. Whoever sold you on the idea that being good is some little weak coward in the corner, that's not true. The globalists poison our food, our water, our psyche through the culture because they know we're powerful. You understand that? All of us as humans, not just as Americans, have a birthright of true liberty and freedom. But you got to demand it, you got to fight for it. And that isn't some heavy burden. That isn't some heavy burden. That is what life is all about. That's the challenge, the struggle. Freedom isn't free. It never is. And like racehorses that love to run so much, they'll rupture their hearts. Their hearts will explode. That's what I feel like. Do people say, oh, you work so hard, we appreciate you? No, this is not work. This is what I was made to do. And this is what you were made to do. So my only fear is that I won't live to my potential. My only fear is that I won't articulate truly the spirit of what I'm trying to say to you. My only fear is that I won't connect with you and that you won't fully awaken and that you won't fully awaken others. That's why I get so angry at the globalists putting little kids on Ritalin and Prozac that they know is meant to brain damage them, the fluoride meant to brain damage us all, and lower our IQ. We think we're smart now. Imagine what we'd be without it. And all their white papers, how they did it to us on purpose. That's the ultimate sin. That's the attack on free will. That's the attempt to fog us and bludgeon us and give us chemical lobotomies so that we can never grow into something great. To do that to humanity while claiming you're trying to build them up, as the globalists do, is the ultimate sin. It is taking little innocence and the magicness of children. And children are magic to us because we're designed at that phase in our life to want to teach them, to want to raise them up, to want to make them honorable, just as our ancestors did for us. And so I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm obnoxious. I know I interrupt people because I don't want to make a point and impress people. I'm desperate like a volcano to explode and to say, yes, you're right. And here. You know, like in a black church service, we're like, I heard that. Say it again. I mean, that's what this is all about here, ladies and gentlemen. It's real. It's real. You're not going to find fulfillment. I know I didn't. In partying and in sex and in street fights. You're not going to find it in the world. Okay? The world and the flesh is part of who we are. You're only going to find fulfillment in discovering truth. And I'm not going to tell you what the perfect definition of the truth is because I don't know. But it's the seeking after the truth. It's reaching for what makes humans magical. It's reaching for the part that we know is there, that is in the stars. Instead of just saying, we're ugly, we're scum, we don't have any value, we're crap, and this culture I see of just getting in to being mediocre and ugly and stinking. And it doesn't mean I can't look into the darkness and understand the appeal of that. I get it. The point is we're way out of balance, ladies and gentlemen. And the globalists are out of balance, and they're going to end up destroying themselves as well. So it's time to reach towards destiny. Martin Luther King said that the universe bends towards justice. And it's true, there is providence that George Washington talked about. You can call it whatever it is. When you dedicate your will and your time to something instead of feeling small, when you realize you can defeat the New World Order, there are so many people I interview who are good men and women who still think we can't beat the New World Order and don't have any confidence in themselves. The globalists are smart people who've joined evil and decided to hurt others and keep others in the dark. They have will. That's why they're in control. When you have knowledge and then you have will and then you have right purpose, moral authority, when it is directed by good, trumps, it's the ace of spades, evil every time. It trumps it hard, bone crushing, like 1 trillion pounds dropped on a cockroach. That's why I say I don't even feel worthy to be here at the tip of the spear ramming into the New World Order. People say, well, why are you still alive? Because God's hand is on me. And whatever little definition we've got can't describe what that is. It's destiny. The universe is in control, not these New World Order people. When you join the will of the universe, when you join that, you're unstoppable. You can feel it right now. Come in, join it. They say, knock, you got to open the door. Evil has to get you to let it in too. The old parable of the vampire. It has to get you to let it in. It has to get you to acquiesce. You understand that? That's a law of the universe. The decision is yours. That's it for this edition of InfoWars Nightly News. I'm Alex Jones.